Fuji Sports. Listen, they've been working with us for a while now. Particularly, they've been supporting and sponsoring this show for over a year. And they have some cool stuff going on their website, don't they?
They always have cool stuff. Amazing gear. Anything you would need for your jiu-jitsu journey, you can find at fujisports.com. But just scrolling through right now, apparel, obviously, gis, bags, anything you could possibly ask for, you can find at fujisports.com.
Hey, it's been a while since we started RŌL TV project.
It's been a while since you started it. I did come in later, and I can't say enough about it, especially the new platform. It's really amazing, fully customizable, and you know a little bit more about the structure.
Well, so two things you need to know. One is the subscription service, which is $9 a month. You can get access to hundreds of videos, hundreds of drills, techniques, and so on in a very nice library categorized as you need them. But two different lessons. You can actually purchase those individually and you own them. So the subscription is not tied to it at all. You can look at things like spider guard, half guard sweeps, half guard chokes, folding pass, and so on. There's so many of them out there. So take a look and see where you need help with the videos, right? 30%. If you type in RŌL Radio as a code.
Who doesn't like saving money? Go to RŌLAcademy.tv. What's up, everyone, and welcome back. If you haven't already, please remember to hit the like, share, subscribe, download, listen, and whatever other button there is, and leave us a review wherever you do listen. That ensures that we can continue bringing you the great guests and amazing content that you have come to expect. Would you take everything you have and dump it into making your dreams come true? Today's guest was still a brown belt when he decided to do just that and open his own jiu-jitsu academy. He took his savings, bought a gym out of state, didn't pursue a comfortable living in the field in which he earned his college degree, and did it all at the height of the pandemic. On this episode, we have the co-owner, instructor of Movement Art Jiu Jitsu in Richboro, Pennsylvania, Nick Salles. Today, Nick discusses how he opened his academy when many were shutting down, always being prepared for anything life throws at you, being willing to do whatever it takes to bring your vision to reality, and so much more. Here's the RŌL Radio with one of the best colored belt competitors and now a black belt under Mikey Musumeci, Nick Salles.
Welcome to RŌL Radio.
And we are live.
We are live.
Hey, twin.
Yeah, we did this again. We're wearing the same sweatshirt.
Not we are. You are wearing the same sweatshirt.
I was in the building before you today. You are copying me. So
okay. We'll resolve this later.
We will. And it's freezing in here, so we're not going to. Neither one of us is going to back down and take this thing off. So
we rather look like fools on YouTube.
Well, yeah, and matching sweatshirts isn't going to make us look any more like fools.
That's cute. That's cute.
It is cute.
Hey, listen, but we if you're watching us on YouTube, we have a new setup here. We turn things around a little bit and created more space between us.
Yeah,
which is working out really, really
good for me. Yeah, it's almost as good as when we did this remotely and we weren't even in the same building. But no, it's nice. I like the way it looks. There is more space. I think what that's really going to help for me is in the editing. There's going to be less mic spillover, so I'm happy so far. We'll see how it works out.
All right. Well, should we get to this?
I think we should.
Nick, how are you, sir?
Hey, how you guys doing?
We're good.
Great to have you on the show. Thanks for your time and thanks for hanging out with us. What an interesting. So, how are things going? On your side.
So far, things are going well. Just came back from PANS, so really. I had the week coming back from PANS to really just focus on recovery, focus on spending time with family. Going into a camp for like PANS, you sacrifice a lot. You miss out on a lot of the social interactions, family time. I was just talking to my girlfriend the other day. Like for 6 weeks, we didn't go on any dates. So really trying to make up for lost time the last week coming back, and now I'm ready to go back into camp for Worlds. So I feel good. My body feels good, and I'm ready to start training and picking things up.
And I heard that you were not feeling well. You got sick over there, or came back with some bug or something.
Yes. So going to Pans, I was already feeling kind of off. I don't know if it was allergies, but my immune system was already crashing. I could feel. And then we went to the airport on Thursday to fly to Orlando, and it was supposed to be a midday flight, but Spirit kept pushing it back. Next thing you know, it's 10 p.m. and they're canceling on us. So me and Danny were just starving inside the airport for like all day, and it was a whole day wasted because we had to buy last minute flights for the next day going into Orlando because they couldn't accommodate us until the Monday. And we were like, well, Pans is on Saturday, so we're not going to be
That's
able
not
to
going
do
to work.
that. It's not going to work. So we
hey,
ended up buying
IBJJF,
flights.
can you guys reschedule?
Yeah. Yeah, right. Imagine sending that email. Can you push it back? But yeah, we ended up flying out of like a smaller airport, 40 minutes away, last minute flights. And again, like I'm feeling even worse because we were supposed to be in Orlando already, like focusing on the weight cut, doing some sauna sessions, and now it got pushed back one more day. So I didn't sleep that night. Going into Orlando the next day, we get there at 5. Same kind of deal. I'm just cutting like 3 pounds for the next day, last minute. My body not really responding all too well, not sleeping too well that night. As you know, night before competition, hardly anyone ever sleeps that well. And then qualified for the second day. And it was a snowball effect at that point. So by the time we came back, it was a red-eye flight Sunday night going into Monday. Got back home at 6 a.m. and I was just dead. And my body just gave up and I just got really, really sick. And that's when I thought I could tough it out. So I kind of let you guys know like last minute, but I reached out and I was really feeling bad. So I was like, I don't want to, I don't want to be in an interview when I can hardly keep my head up and feeling good. So I thank you guys for accommodating me and helping me out in that way.
No problem.
We're glad that you feel better, or feeling better, and recovering from all this. But listen, I'm curious actually I'm curious, how do you deal with a situation like this mentally, right? I mean, obviously there's a physical component of all of this. There's physical impact as you lack of sleep, lack of hydration probably because you're cutting weights, and nutrition is not where it normally would be, plus the stress and anxiety of competing, not 3 days from now, but like next morning at this point, right? A lot of people struggle with all that, the anxiety of competing, the pressure of competing and performing at a certain level. How in the world are you doing this, having all these circumstances completely out of your control?
Yeah, I feel like that's, if you're a true athlete, that's just something that comes with the job description. It's just something you're always prepared for. Like even when you compete, you don't go in there thinking you're going to submit you might be confident in thinking you can submit the person in a couple of seconds, but you never go in there thinking that the match is going to be easy. You always go in there preparing for a war. And I think it's the same mentality with everything, right? I have friends who basically flew in the morning of and still competed, and it's all because of the airlines are all having problem post-COVID and nothing's ever the same. But yeah, I remember me and Danny in the airport and the flight being delayed, and we already knew like that it was most likely going to be canceled. We were hearing like horror stories from other people that were traveling. We're like, this is definitely going to be canceled. And we had that realization, like, we're not going to be able to finish our weight cut today. We're going to have to do it tomorrow, the day before the tournament. And knowing that, it definitely sucks because you want that day before your matches to be a day you relax, a day maybe you focus and visualize more on the job that needs to be done. You don't want to be in a sauna at 10 p.m. at night sweating off that last pound for sure. But like I said, this is just part of the job. And when you have that realization, you just get ready for it. You can't really overthink it too much because the more you think about it, the more you feel bad for yourself. So it's just one of those things that you're like, okay, well, let's do the best we can, and let's the job has to be done. We're still going to compete. I actually remember Danny having this moment where he's like, because we didn't buy the next flights for the next day yet, and he's like, man, what if we can't find flights? Because I think he looked real quick and there was a flight for like $2,000, like ridiculous amount. And it was like at night or something. And we're like, man, are we about to drive if we can't find a flight? Are we about to drive from here to Florida? And we both kind of looked at each other like, I guess we're going to have to. So it just shows you like, like for us and a lot of the people that we know who compete in jiu-jitsu, like, it's all about the sacrifice. And, going into these things, you just you just do what you can. You try to you can't control all the variables, so you just do the best you can.
During that time, you at the airport, for hours, and you going through these struggles. At any point of time, does it even cross your mind that we might not be competing? We're not going to go. We're gonna forfeit this whole thing, and we're gonna stay home.
Yeah, it's obviously like a thought that's invading your brain, but you're trying to kick it out, and you're trying to mute it and suppress it. But for sure, like realistically, you're having these thoughts like, there's no way we could afford to pay me and him like in total $4,000 to fly down to Orlando to compete at Pans, and there's, even driving, like we might not even get there in time, and we might not even be able to cut the weight if we drive. So it's like, you have these thoughts like, man, maybe we're not going to be able to go to Pans, but like I was saying, like you try to suppress those thoughts, and you just try to focus on what you can control, and you try to be positive the most you can. And look, if it worked out that we couldn't make it, at least I feel like I would be content in knowing I tried everything I could to still compete. But for sure, like I was trying to avoid that possibility at all costs.
And I assume you know why I'm asking this, because there's probably thousands of people out there who might find themselves in that same situation, and they're like, well, I'm just not doing it. There's 15 reasons why I shouldn't do this. Yeah. Right. And why the hell am I going to go above and beyond and really push that hard? Is not that serious. Who cares? You know what I mean? Right. It's like, we find, I often say there's always a reason not to train jiu-jitsu, but we got to we got to dig it deep to pick up that bag after a long day, instead of sitting in front of TV. And what did Cruz say, Professor Cruz?
Oh, yeah.
I bring this
Thursday
up
night.
Thursday night football, beer and pizza, the worst enemy of jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
Oh, I agree with that. Beer and pizza for sure. But we have this joke that we truly believe like jiu-jitsu people are just a different type of crazy, For maybe the listeners who don't know, like even as a black belt competitor in the adult division, you don't make any money competing in the IBJJF majors. So Pans is the second biggest tournament of the year, and you don't make any money. You actually spend money if you don't have sponsors and stuff like that. So to jump through all these hoops to compete at a chance for a medal in a tournament that you're not financially benefiting from, it takes a certain kind of crazy, So I don't fault people who maybe under different circumstances, maybe this isn't their like main goal, they're confronted with the same situation, just like, it's not, I'm not going to Pants this year. Or it's not meant to be, I don't blame them, because the sacrifice definitely outweighs some of the benefits. So for sure, I could see that. But for us, like we're talking like we're already 20 pounds into a weight cut. It's 6 weeks of, being in the gym all day. The last thing you want to do is just, not have anything to validate that sacrifice. So for us, there was no other way.
Yeah, and I didn't even think about this, but I mean, as you're talking about it, you're completely right. There's no financial benefit behind going to Pan Ams. I mean, prestige and the title and bragging rights and all the other things.
Yeah, and you could argue the seminar, the how you can use the winnings and the medal to push seminars and market yourself could make you money, but there's no financial gain directly from it.
Directly from the competition, yeah. Do you think that jiu-jitsu is the only sport that really happens? Like I'm thinking right now, and most other sports, all the world level competitions, they are treated as a professional sport. And I'm sure somebody's going to find something that I'm saying wrong, but
I think like judo is a very similar sentiment. I saw some American judo guy post something on Facebook kind of recently about how the Olympic Committee doesn't fund them, and all the American judokas in the Olympics are self-funded if they can't find sponsors. So I think they have like a similar sentiment. And I know powerlifting, like those kind of sports are very similar in that sense too.
But I do believe those guys do get money for first 3 places. It's not a lot of money. If anybody knows about this, tune in. Let us know, because I'm curious.
I definitely don't know.
About it. I don't know logistics about it, but I do believe that Olympics actually does pay for the first, second, and third place. It's not a lot of money. It's not millions, that's for sure.
You're not going to make back what you spent. What you put
absolutely
into
not.
There.
So, but it's such an interesting, I think, dynamic. Do you think we have ever get to the point where jiu-jitsu is treated as a professional sport, meaning you can make a living on competition?
So when I started competing as a blue belt, I remember if you wanted to make any money from competing, you would have to go to like a Naga or Grappler's Quest and enter like the expert division, where, you know, after 4 or 5 matches, you'll get like $1,000. And I remember for the time that being a lot of money. And so I think in retrospect, the way the sport has evolved and the direction it's going, with like ADCC now being sponsored by Joe Rogan, cryptocurrency, you have Spider giving out $100,000 to first place winners. Like, I think we've come a long way, but still far from reaching anywhere near these other professional sports, where athletes are not only being paid to win, but they're being paid to just perform, and they're being paid to show up and train. You know, like, you take the highest level jiu-jitsu guy and they still have to spend most of their time recording DVDs, marketing their DVDs, marketing themselves for seminars, teaching at schools if they don't own their own school. And so for a high level jiu-jitsu athlete, you're still making most of your money from teaching and through other means, in comparison to like maybe even like a B League soccer player. You know, they're still making money through being an athlete primarily. So it is, I think jiu-jitsu is still far from reaching that level.
Is that because jiu-jitsu is so young as far as martial art is concerned?
I hope so. Because, you know, my goals are to compete for at least another 10 years. So hopefully there is some runoff and benefits towards the end of that decade, because I do believe part of it is because the sport's so young. So I think as the time goes on, we will see more of these benefits. But at the same time, it's one of those things that I do believe there's truth to jiu-jitsu not being a spectator-friendly sport to the masses. I think that we can kind of tap into the UFC market, like the MMA market. We can tap into the wrestling market. We can tap into other markets that exist that are very profitable. But I don't think in terms of mainstream audience, I don't think it'll ever be at that level, you know?
Unless they modify jiu-jitsu like they modified judo.
Yeah, they'll have to change the rule sets. I want to go back a couple minutes. You were talking about the mentality you had with the struggles of getting the pans through all that. And over the last couple of years through COVID, many people have had those same struggles with their academies, with training themselves. And here you and Danny decide this is your opportunity to open your own academy. And we talked a little bit before we started recording. People were telling you, you're crazy, don't do it. Was that mentality what got you there? And if you could talk a little bit about the process.
Yeah. So I would say a lot of the mentality is just maybe part of who we are and has always been a part of our experience with jiu-jitsu. So the pandemic came at a pretty, weird time for us, because I was in between graduating college and teaching at Marcelo's as an assistant instructor. So I was teaching like intros and stuff. So I was getting experience as an instructor, and I was falling in love with the aspect of teaching students. But I also just had gotten my degree in biology and finished my internship at a fertility clinic. And so I have my parents in my ears telling me, like, go forward with that, get a real job. That's like the word people like to use, go get a real job. But I was also just commuting back and forth from the city, trying to train with the best people, trying to get that experience, just in case like the opportunity presented itself. Maybe I will pursue being an athlete full time. Maybe I will open up my own school. And at this time, right before the pandemic, I was traveling a lot and teaching. And fortunately for me and Danny, we were able to save up some money and have some money just in case we wanted to do something. And so when the pandemic happened, everything shut down. Marcelo's was closed. all the schools that I had prior experience teaching at in Jersey were closed. And so there weren't really many avenues for us to make money as jiu-jitsu athletes, as jiu-jitsu coaches. And so, you know, me and Danny were kind of training in our basement, just kind of, you know, trudging along, doing the best we can to keep our tools sharp. Just in case things opened up, we can jump right back into the competition scene like nothing had happened. Of course, we didn't know how grave of the situation it would be. You know, the pandemic ended up lasting like way longer than expected, but nonetheless, we were training.
I thought it would be gone in the 2 weeks.
2 weeks, flatten the curve.
Yeah,
flatten the curve,
right?
and then
Marcelo
we're done.
said they were going to be closed for 2 weeks. I'm like just waiting for them to reopen, but it just never happened. And we really had no choice until we heard of a school in Richboro, PA. It was a jiu-jitsu school, and they did a little bit of kickboxing, MMA as well. And they were trying to sell their business or sell all of the stuff within it to break even. And so we had gotten wind of that, and you know, we made an offer on the gym, and we bought it with the money that we had saved up, all the money that we had basically. And it really was a decision out of necessity. It wasn't like, you know, a lot of people ask us like, oh, was it at the right time? And I don't think necessarily it was the right time, maybe mentally, because it just had happened like that out of nowhere. Like I had no way to prepare for being a full-time coach from one day to the next, but it was an opportunity that presented itself, and we had the passion within us, and we had the desire there already. So when that opportunity came about, it was a no-brainer for us. So we just, you know, you spend all the money we had, we bought the gym. We didn't know how many students we would have. We didn't even know if we would break even on the rent and all the utilities, but we just made sure that now we had something that was ours, you know, when we had nothing at that point, no security, no job. Marcelo's had made an announcement that maybe they would never reopen at that point. So it's like, you know, it was all or nothing at that point. So we bought the gym. We started operating within the rules of Pennsylvania. So we're like right outside the outskirts of Philadelphia. So it was a little bit less strict. We could operate as long as we had masks, and we did temperature tests and things like that. So we made sure we did everything the right way. And little did you know, people started coming and training, and we were able to pay the rent. And you know, that's the story basically. And we haven't looked back since then.
Walk me through some of those conversations that you and your partner have. So on one side, you have a strong message from Marcelo saying, hey, we're closing and we might not open. That's coming from one of the most prestigious academies in New York, if not US. Okay, one of the biggest names. That's a strong message. And then you go, well, you know, let's open it. Let's spend all of my money that we all saved up. Let's buy this academy that we don't even know. We don't even know if we're going to pay the bills, but let's do it. And then let's figure this out, kind of, you know, as it goes on in the middle of this craziness. And I'm referring to pandemic. Walk me through some of these conversations that you had internally, perhaps with your parents, with your family, with your girlfriend. Does she think you're crazy yet? You know, and with your partners, you know, as all of this is unfolding, right? Because from outside, this might look like you're completely insane, but there had to be some logic behind all this.
And then another thing that people don't realize too is like Danny and I, we're not businessmen by any means. Like, I don't know anything about business. I just started learning about Facebook ads and all that as we were kind of learning about it as we went along. So I didn't even know how to open an LLC. You know, me and Danny both had to figure that out with the help, of course, like people that we knew. So yeah, I don't think you could say it is logical. I think it was one of those things like I had a decision, right? I could easily just, you know, move in with my parents, wait for things to blow over, and apply for a secure job in the fertility field, or apply for a graduate program and further my studies in developmental sciences and things like that. Or I could spent all the money I had with Danny in investing in this business and, doing what we love the most. So, we're not businessmen, but we're super passionate about jiu-jitsu. I truly believe that not a lot of people love jiu-jitsu more than me and Danny. And I think it shows, everyone who comes to the gym, they see us. We're the first ones in the gym. We're the last ones to leave. We love what we do. We eat lunch on the mats. We're always studying. We're always drilling. So for us at the time, it wasn't logical, but it was pure passion. It was a passionate decision. And we were willing to deal with the consequences if they happened, if we had a conversation. I remember me and Danny about this, and we're well aware that it's a crazy decision, but we told each other, we're like, are we willing to work an Uber Eats, delivery job on the side to pay the rent for the school? Yes. Are we willing to do this for the school if we have to? Yes. So we had a plan just in case we couldn't, make ends meet and we couldn't pay the rent. We were willing to work other jobs and sacrifice our time doing other things to make sure that we could pay the rent. Luckily, we didn't have to, but to know that I had that reassurance from my business partner, from my best friend, really helped build that security in my decision, knowing that there was no way we could fail because we were crazy enough to make sure it worked no matter what. But as far as backlash from the people around me, that's, of course, and I know it comes from a good place. Like for my parents specifically, like them telling us that we're crazy and that we shouldn't do it, that we should think twice about our decision. It's all the money I have. I know that it came from a good place, and they were looking out for us and they wanted to make sure that we weren't making a decision that we were going to regret. But I always believe that people will deter you from the things that they themselves can't see themselves doing. And it's not because, you're making the wrong decision. It's just that, everyone has a different path and everyone has a different threshold for what's crazy and what's outrageous. So for my parents, they didn't think it would be lucrative, but nowadays they're happy for me and they're like, man, we applaud you for going through and listening to your heart and doing that. So sometimes you can change people's perspectives on things by, following your dreams, and you can kind of change how people look at, decisions and how you can make your own purpose in life. A lot of people are scared to do those things themselves, but you can inspire people to do that for themselves if you take a leap forward and you do it for yourself.
I think what's striking about your story and everything you're sharing with us right now is that many people would find themselves, or people who would find themselves in the same position as you have, they would simply say, well, we'll see how things work out. We'll shoot it off the hip, versus what I'm hearing from you is the clear acknowledgement of, listen, I don't know how to run Facebook ads. I have no idea how to open LLC. I have no clue, how to do this. I don't know nothing about business. Plus, I'm willing to go above and beyond to find 2 or 3 other jobs to pay the rent if necessary. But what I do know that there is 0 chances I'm failing in this. And I think that is huge when it comes to business. So, before we move on, my head goes off to you. I want to congratulate you on being, I often call it too stupid to quit, but there is something behind that,
For sure.
There's something behind that. They say, what do they say? People who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world, they usually do. And it is kind of in a sense of, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I do know that I have to go above and beyond, and there is no option of resigning there. Gary, what do you think about that? Because you have this smirk on your face, and I know the smartest comment is coming right from the side, so might as well just include you in the conversation.
I always smirk when you're struggling for a word, but I think that, we've talked to several people, and you always regret the things. I think when you get older, Thomas and I are a little bit older, you regret the things.
Older.
I'm older than
young.
You. Yes,
I'm young stud over here.
But you regret the things you didn't do, not the things you did do. So I think when you take those chances, and you're going into it, as crazy as people might think it is, with a plan. It's not like you were just like, oh, we'll buy this gym and we'll move out of state and we'll see what happens. You guys obviously put it all together beforehand. So, I mean, yeah, like Thomas said, hats off. It's fantastic. And it's great to see that maybe you are changing the perceptions of the people around you, by succeeding. and taking those risks. So awesome.
Yeah, so don't be quitting right now.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, we don't want to hear.
We're gonna look like fools now.
when I go back to your
it's
website
only
to
the
prepare
beginning.
for the episode's release, I don't want to see permanently closed.
Yeah, right.
But listen, on a serious note, any regrets? Anything that you think, man, this was stupid?
No, I mean, to be honest, when you make these decisions and the result exceeds your expectations, you're just left in awe, really. You just want to push the envelope even further. Like, we have a joke and we say, this next year is going to be even better, because 2020 for us was crazy, everything from the pandemic to open up a gym. Me and Danny opened up a gym as brown belts during the pandemic. That's already a highly stigmatized thing in jiu-jitsu, Try convincing people who have no idea what jiu-jitsu is when they walk through the door that you know what you're talking about, even though you're a brown belt and there's maybe a black belt down the street, but that the product that you're offering is better than what they're offering. But because you're a brown belt, the perceived idea for people who don't know what jiu-jitsu is that you don't know what you're talking about, or that you're not as valid of an authoritarian on the subject. So, winning brown belt pans that same year and then getting promoted by Mikey to black belt that December, we had that joke. We were like, man, 2020 was crazy, but 2021 hopefully can be even better. And, 2021 was a wild year for us as well. We were able to grow beyond what we projected our student
Membership
base to be. Yeah, exactly. We were thinking that we would maybe get around 75 students by the end of 2021, just based on some business models we made, and we superseded that by a huge margin. And it is the same thing for 2022. We have some goals for 2022. So far, we didn't accomplish it with pans, but that doesn't mean anything. The year's just getting started. So there's plenty of more time to surpass business goals, athletic endeavor goals, even educational goals. Last year, we were able to release, I think, 4 BJJ Fanatics DVDs that did really well. And this year we want to produce more content and put more stuff out there for people.
Good for you. I mean, your drive and passion is clearly visible, just even through this conversation. So again, congrats to you. Opening academy as a brown belt. Now, that
there's layers to the decision.
There's layers.
Bad decisions we made.
Well, this is the interesting part, right? Because especially for individuals who don't know what jiu-jitsu is, and I'm sure as people walk into the academy, you have those as well who are looking to lose weight, for martial arts, kids, or whatever have you, or whatever the case might be. A lot of them do look at, well, wait a minute. What do you mean you're not a black belt?
My kid's a black belt in Taekwondo.
All right, true story.
Exactly.
True story. I said this a couple of weeks ago, but listen, you didn't have opportunity to hear, so I'm going to say this story again. A few weeks back, literally, we had somebody walk into the academy, and our general manager tells me this story, but we had somebody walk into the academy, and they are looking for Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
And first, he thinks it's a joke. And he goes through the whole elaborate conversation with the jiu-jitsu, blah, 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 whole thing, and they're like, no, I'm looking for Cobra Kai. Okay, and then it becomes serious. And they're actually serious about this. And no offense to any martial art. I don't want to be misunderstood here. But at some point, when you walk into the academy, and above the door, there is huge-ass sign that says jiu-jitsu. And you walk into that facility, and everybody does jiu-jitsu, and you're looking for Cobra Kai. I don't know. I'm puzzled on this one.
It literally
from my experience,
and they walked out.
I'm sorry.
They walked out. They were gone. There was zero interest. Okay, and again, I love this story not because it's funny, but people have no idea what jiu-jitsu is. They have no clue. That's mind blowing to me.
I think we're so immersed in the culture and the jiu-jitsu community that we forget what it's like to look in from like a bystander's perspective. And for these people, it's like jiu-jitsu is just like a catch-all word for martial arts, or it's like synonymous with MMA. So, I can't even begin to describe how many people we get in through the doors who are just like, wanting to learn maybe like what they would imagine, I guess, would be like Krav Maga, but they think it's jiu-jitsu. They're like, oh, when are we going to defend, these chokes and eye gouge and all this stuff? And it's mind-boggling that no one looks to do research before walking in through the door. They don't type jiu-jitsu
you can Google it from the car,
see what it's like,
right, while you're sitting outside in the parking lot. And it, coincidentally enough, it literally happened again Friday. So,
it did?
Yeah.
Well,
while I was here,
maybe we should change the name.
It was somebody came in with a couple kids, and that's what the kids were looking for. So the parents hadn't taken any time to see what the kids were talking about. They just brought them in, and they were looking for Cobra Kai.
Appears to me that Netflix is making bigger impact than Joe Rogan. I mean,
I'm worried. Is this going to set jiu-jitsu back a few years? I don't know, but.
Somebody needs to make a show about jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
But no, we really did have like a guy come in one time, and this was when we were brown belts, and Danny and I were drilling, so we had our brown belts on, and he walks in and he looks at us and he says, "Where's the head guy?"
Yeah.
And then we looked at each other, we looked at him, we're like, we are the head guys, and he just walked right out the door.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, whatever,
but
crazy.
But in all seriousness, right, when we talk about business and when we talk about running operation and running academy and things of that nature, those are not your clients. They are looking for something else. They whether it's true or not, whether it's funny because I mean it makes me laugh, but those people are not your clients. And I think what's important is focusing on people who are your clients, people who are looking for what you are selling, for people what you're offering, and are able to support and invest their time and efforts into what you can offer. Because otherwise, we are disconnected. We are on two separate planets, and no matter what I tell you, you will never believe me. Plus, and likely you're going to cancel or leave after a few weeks or a couple months if we get lucky. So
exactly. And that's something we're super straightforward with everyone who walks in through the door. We tell them from day one that we are a sport jiu-jitsu school. We're not a competition school. We don't push competition, and it's not a requirement. And in fact, most of our students have no desire to compete, but we do teach jiu-jitsu within that framework of, points, that idea of position before submission is super important. And so teaching jiu-jitsu within that framework of it being a sport, and that way we've weeded out a lot of the people who are maybe looking for self-defense. We try to point them in the right direction. And we tell them, look, if you become good enough at sport jiu-jitsu, say like a blue belt level, for sure you can use it to defend yourself without a doubt. But we don't want to give the illusion that we're specifically teaching people to prepare themselves for self-defense. If you want to use sport jiu-jitsu as a means to get into shape, and as a byproduct of that, maybe you do learn skills to defend yourself, that's great. That's just an added bonus, but that is not what we're selling. Danny's good about how he puts it. He likes to kind of compare it to what we're offering to like what maybe a basketball program is offering, or what we want to compete with other sports. We want to be an option for parents or for adults who are trying to pick up a new hobby, to explore that hobby in a way that makes sense to them, in a way that's a game, in a way that's fun. And we've noticed that once we present jiu-jitsu in that way, where it is a game, where, it's a game with stats, like just like RPG. It has stats, you have your guard stats, your passing stats, your takedown stats. And when you invest in these stats, you start to become better at playing this game. And in the end, once you know how to play the game, you can have fun with it, because now you can play with other players. And that's kind of what our business model is,
And what you mentioning now, it's fundamentally important from a business perspective, being honest to your clients, or prospects, I should say, about what you are offering. There are so many just businesses in general, but jiu-jitsu academies in particular, I think that they use this kind of a trap situation where come and sign up, and then the expectations from the expectations of what's being offered is very different to what they thought they would be getting, right? So
Yes, for sure.
And even though it kind of sucks when people walk out and say, well, this is not for me, you know, I always think about it, well, they would not stay anyway. So what?
Exactly. So it's like, it's one of those things like,
up?
Yeah. And you want those particular people to find something that brings them happiness. So there's no point in trying to convince them otherwise. Like, you know, just like you're saying, let them go. Hopefully they find something else. But jiu-jitsu, I believe, is an art, is a sport that does appeal to a certain personality type, and those are the people we're trying to appeal to, you know.
I got a question. While I was looking at your website earlier, there was a video on there, and in the narration it said, fall in love with the process of jiu-jitsu. What does that mean for you and Danny? What is the process?
Yeah, so me and Danny, we are self-proclaimed nerds. We love the cerebral aspects of jiu-jitsu, not necessarily the athletic aspects. So a large part of our development is just watching tape, and it's breaking down positions, troubleshooting techniques. And this is in large part why we resonate so well with Mikey, and why Mikey has been such a great mentor to us, because he looks at jiu-jitsu through those lenses as well. And this is the kind of philosophy we try to impart on our students. We try to make them fall in love with learning jiu-jitsu, not in love with doing jiu-jitsu. So for a lot of gyms, I feel like most students look forward to the rolling portion. It's like, if you were to ask most students, they just want to roll, you know, and that's why open mat is such a success. And that's why most people show up to class late, you know. There's like what do you say? It's like almost like a joke that once you're a purple belt, you skip warm-ups, right?
Is that a joke? Yeah, this is legit. This is a legit rule that's getting embedded into
thing,
you. Yeah.
It's a social contagion that once you turn purple belt, you skip warm-ups.
I'm legit confused when my purple belts show up at the beginning of the class. I'm just lost.
When they actually show up in the beginning?
Right. Like, what are you doing here?
Yeah, and I think that's because everyone just wants a shortcut to the rolling, you know? And so for us, rolling is fun, but it's not the funnest part. It's the process of getting better, which is usually done through drilling, but mostly done through learning, right? So that's the culture we try to build at Movement Art. We try to make students realize how important learning is, and we want to create a culture where that's the priority. And we've been able to create that. Like, if you come to our gym and you come to an open mat session, people aren't really learning. A lot of students have their notebooks out and they're writing down notes and they're breaking down positions with each other. And it's an amazing thing to witness, because that's kind of what that was our vision for the facility since the beginning. So to see that come to fruition is amazing. But yeah, a lot of people ask that, like, what does that mean? Like, the process of learning jiu-jitsu, the process of learning how to do jiu-jitsu. And that's basically what it is. It's not necessarily doing jiu-jitsu that we want our students to love. It's learning about it and learning it, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, there's layers to jiu-jitsu, right? So that's a big part of this, right? Anybody can memorize 1 or 2 or 20 moves. The difficulty comes in with connecting them and really finding different opportunities, seeing concepts and finding things on your own, and then applying the principles that you've learned somewhere else, like essentially creating your own way, right? It's easy to memorize things, but doing it on your own, that's much, much, much more difficult, right?
100%. And we push that idea of being your own coach. Like, we're here to guide you guys in the right direction, but we're not here to spoon feed you guys. And that's where I think it also comes from, why we push that idea so much, is because we want our students to be able to think for themselves to a certain degree. So that's kind of something we think is important for someone's jiu-jitsu development, because for us, a large part of our development was just learning on our own. Because when you're a competitor and you want to shortcut the process, you can't wait for a coach to show you something. You got to go out on your own and find resources and buy DVDs and go to seminars so that you can expedite the learning process as much as possible, so you can close the gap and compete at a high level. And that's kind of the idea we push on our students. Like, even if you don't want to compete, there's no reason you can't do jiu-jitsu at a high level. And the best way to do that is to be your own coach and to be on top of your learning like that.
And that's not a shortcut, I don't think. I think it's more work, but it does expedite the process, maybe, right? So you might get the results quicker, but you're investing more time, more of your own time than just, clocking in and clocking out on the iPad when you get to the academy.
Yeah. We try to avoid that clock in, clock out mentality because we've been there. There was a time in my career where I thought drilling was just doing a knee cut over and over again for 1 hour. And in reality, I was just clocking in and clocking out as if jiu-jitsu was a job, but it doesn't necessarily have to be done in that format. It could be more thought-provoking and engaging if you look at it a different way, and go about it a different way.
It's all about stimulating. It's all about really engaging your mind and really thinking about it as this whole process of educating yourself, because that's what we're doing. I mean, we are essentially educating ourselves on a brand new skill set. So it happens, it's fun, and so it happens that you get to choke somebody out while you're doing it. But it's a process of troubleshooting, continuous troubleshooting, and educating yourself. And if you do check in, check out, well, you might be actually cutting corners, and the results might not be the same. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be good. It just means that somebody might be better than you, or your results won't be as you expected at the beginning.
And you brought up something interesting with the stimulating. I feel like the students who do the clock in, clock out end up burning themselves out sooner, or kind of fall out of love with jiu-jitsu sooner, or maybe even reach those quote unquote plateaus that people talk about, which shouldn't really exist, because jiu-jitsu is like this infinite well of information. So I think you hit on something really true. If it's not stimulating you mentally and piquing an interest and the curiosity, you're not gonna want to do it for too long,
Yeah, and you're gonna get burned out. This is where you get smashed. This is where it sucks. This is where you don't want to show up. This is where sitting on Thursday night eating pizza and drinking beer just is more appealing than getting.
Right.
I'm just right, isn't it? I mean, it's
and I think you're also relying on physicality more.
Yeah,
and for the older practitioners, I think that
Nick wouldn't know anything about that.
No,
he's a young stud who's allowing food to everybody.
I have a question for you guys, because you guys in that area would know a lot more than me.
The old area.
So
I don't know anything about being older. Okay, I'm young and right here.
I fill out the different demographics now when I have to go places, and it's so depressing when I'm like, I moved into that last age bracket. I'll never fill out another one, unless I'm filling. If there's someplace after death where you have to fill that out, maybe there. But as far as here on Earth, I have moved into that last bracket.
That's awesome.
Sucks.
No, but for real, so our night classes are a lot younger in demographic, but we have an 11:30 class, and majority of our students are actually probably over the age of 35. They're older. They're in their lunch break, trying to do jiu-jitsu, and we retain a good amount of them. But I guess we're so young in our teaching careers and opening up a business. We haven't even been open for fully 2 years fully. So what are some advice you guys would give to me for retaining some of those older students? How can I stimulate them, and how can I keep them interested? Because you guys have to understand too, the gym for us, going back to why we opened up the gym and why we had to, is because, like I said, Marcellus was closed and we needed to train too. So the idea of the gym was to sustain ourselves financially, to teach people because we were passionate about teaching, but to also create a space that we can train full time so we can compete at the highest level. And so closer to tournament time, things get intense. Danny and I are training with the students and they love it. But like you guys had mentioned, with the older demographic, maybe there's a better way to go about, creating an environment where you can retain more of them and where you can stimulate them, even during these times where things get intense and maybe more physical.
I would say right off the bat.
First of all, you got to start your own podcast. Invite us as a guest, and then we can answer.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
Oh, that's awesome.
For me, I think a lot of it has to do with honesty. Hey, man, you're a little older. You're not going to be able to move.
Gary's quoting my conversation with him.
This I've heard this conversation in many a private lesson. But you're not going to, this aspect of jiu-jitsu, this heavy competition aspect might not be for you. So find what you do want to get out of it and concentrate on that more. And, Thomas and I have talked to a lot of people. I think Laborio was talking about like the average age is 36. So like the average age for guys doing this is a little older. And I think retaining them is setting them up for success and giving them realistic expectations. Thomas?
Yeah, listen, I in my mind, it's all about the goals that you set for your students and the expectations you set for them. So, right. So you have, let's just say 21-year-old 21-year-old competitors or want-to-be competitors, their training should be extremely different than the 41-year-olds. Like, it should be. You can't put them in the same bucket because physically they're not able to perform the same way. They won't be able to, right? And then you have more layers. Like the 41-year-old probably has established career, which means, him getting a black eye or twisted finger is probably not okay, versus the 21-year-old will care less. Matter of fact, the black eye probably is a trophy thing where he's going to be talking about it and stimulating others in the same way. You know what I mean? So I think understanding your students and what they need is a key principle and component of your success. You do need to provide a service, or one needs to provide a service for the demographic that they are catering towards. Now, that doesn't mean that jiu-jitsu should be watered down, or that doesn't mean that they should not be pushed. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't do certain things. What that just means, the expectations have to be slightly adjusted to make these guys successful, right? So, the older guys, like, 65 or above, like Gary, they need probably, 17-minute warm-up, and that's including all the stretching of fingers and everything on the beginning. I'm joking, but, it's very different once you are, up there, especially with your career, your bodies don't move the same way, and especially if you go, like, on a serious note, if you're, 50 and up, like, it's hard to go 6 rounds full power. It's hard. It's hard. It's not that you can't do it. Just next morning, man, there's aches on the
regretting it.
Yeah,
absolutely. And listen, so look at it from this perspective, right? You can push these guys to their limit, but they won't show up next morning or next day because they need recovery. Yeah. So would it be better for them to train, let's just say 3 or 4 times a week versus 7 times a week, but do show up consistently? Right? So that's like, in my mind, it boils down to the effect is not how many times you train, but how consistent you are, right? Like, everybody needs recovery points. Just the older guys need them more. That's just...
Today's my recovery day, by the way. I did open mat Saturday and Sunday.
Thank you, guys. No, that's really helpful. So it sounds like just having better communication with them too. It's like, I always thought maybe bringing up the age thing could be deemed disrespectful, or I guess singling someone out, thinking that maybe they wouldn't be able to do something because of their age.
I think you can
come off the wrong way, but
you can get people to admit it without, you don't need to bring it up. What Thomas said, what are your goals?
Right.
And when they start talking about that, I think if they're honest with themselves in any way and they have unrealistic goals, you're going to help guide them into a more sustainable path for them to have longevity, not only for you, right, for their monthly memberships, but for them to keep exploring and keep doing this until they're my age, I guess.
Honestly, and I could be wrong on this, but this is just from my experience being on the mat. I think the older guys actually stick around longer than the younger guys. The younger guys are the ones who are going to get a job, the ones who are going to get married. The younger guys are the ones who are going to move out of the stage. Those are the guys
go away for college.
Exactly. Yeah. Those are the guys who are going to have consistency for a short term. The older guys are the ones who are going to stick around because they have established lives. They are the ones who are looking for, get away from their family in the evening or during the day at a job, whatever it is, go get a couple rolls, and stimulate themselves. At the same time, I don't think they want to be pushovers. I don't think they want to be treated like they are unable to do things. They're still fully capable of doing things. It's just, their body might not be moving the same way, and maybe their goals are not the same way. So not the same, they might not be interested in being Pan Am champion. They might not. They don't care. Then they probably make enough money doing whatever they are doing. They don't care about gold medals, It's just a different point of life. But I think that's the important part. Understanding who is your clientele, understanding what you are able to offer to them, and maybe you are not able to offer anything to them, and that's fine too. There's plenty of academies out there who are 100% competition driven, and they are not interested in anybody who is over 30. And they are extremely successful, and life is good, right? And, I think it's up to individuals to figure out what their demographic is or who they want to cater towards. But, you can always create a class over 75.
One thing that's helped us a lot is Danny's mom. She trains with us. I don't know if you've ever there's been pictures going around that went viral, a match between her and another older woman. I think it was Pan Am's Masters 7 division or whatever. So she's 65 years old and she trains. And one thing that's helped the academy is having her presence on the mat, because we always get those questions, right? Oh, am I too old to train, right? But with her presence, that never becomes an issue. That never becomes an afterthought, because as soon as people walk in, they're presented to her, because she works the front desk for us. She helps the business a lot. I can't begin to describe how much Danny's mom has helped us become successful, but she's the first person you see. And, when you go to classes, she's at every class. So I feel like she's almost become a mascot for the school, and a beacon for the older demographic. When they come in, they see her on the mat and they get inspired, and they see that jiu-jitsu is something they can do. So yeah, I appreciate your guys' answer, because we do have a lot of older people, like I said, in the 1130 class, and I want to see that grow, and I want that trend to continue. I don't want them to get discouraged.
Ask them for help. Have these conversations with them. But here's a very serious question, okay? And I want you to really think about this before you answer. Have you ever seen Danny's mom beat the crap out of Danny?
So there's a joke in the academy that whatever you do not let her nickname is Mama Freestyle. Don't let Mama Freestyle get you in a knee cut position. She will pass you. She's so good from there, dude. She has such a good base. And I've seen, I kid you not, we've had competitive brown belts come and train with us. And they got too lackadaisical, and they let her get into positions that maybe they thought they could scramble out of. And it was a mistake. They let her get into that knee cut position, and it's all over.
That's awesome. We gotta have Danny on.
Gary, we need to have Danny on. Then we need to have his mom after that. Because I have a feeling
her knee cut's scary, man. Her knee cut's scary.
That's great.
But how is that? So in your mind, training, you said she's 65. In your mind, how is that when you either watch her train with some of the younger guys, or maybe you are training with her? How is that in your mind unfolding? I mean, somebody who is, let's just call it what it is. They are older. They are up there, right? The mechanics of the body are the same. Their spirit and their desires, their mind might be as sharp, but the body's not doesn't move the same way. Is there a component of surprise? How in the world this woman does things that in nature? How can she hang with all the other guys? Or maybe you're not surprised. Maybe this is something that comes natural, and you see a lot of potential.
Yeah, so she has definitely been a centerpiece for how we develop the curriculum and how we view jiu-jitsu, because she was our first student, and so a lot of our philosophy of how we teach jiu-jitsu comes from her being the ideal demographic. We want to teach jiu-jitsu that she can use, because maybe she's smaller, she's older, she's not as fast, she's not as strong. So we have to make sure all of our lesson plans and all the jiu-jitsu we teach is something that caters towards her. And if she can use it effectively, then there's not a shred of doubt in our minds that someone more athletic, someone bigger, someone stronger, someone bigger can use it as well. So using her as a teaching tool to kind of base all of our lessons from has really helped us kind of grow and develop as educators, because like I said, she was our first student. But she, on the other hand, is probably one of the hardest workers I've ever seen. She's on the mat just as much as me and Danny. She's there all day. This is something that she's kind of accepted to be her main hobby, her main purpose in life. And so when she's not doing jiu-jitsu, she's doing rehab stuff. She's doing stuff for, her hips, for her knees, making sure that her body can keep up with the demand of training. So when I see her training, I'm honestly not too surprised because I know how much work and how much attention she puts to having her body cooperate and function at that level. So it's amazing to see, like, because she trains hard. You know, I'm not sugarcoating it. It's not like she's just like flow rolling and people are going easy on her. I mean, people do, of course, don't want to be the one to hurt Danny's mom. You know, that's not going to go well. But you know, she does train hard, and the students train hard with her. So it's amazing to see.
Isn't it amazing how many will find the age as excuse not to do anything? Forget about jiu-jitsu for a moment, but not to do anything physical. And they are 35 or 40, and then you have individuals who are in their 60s. Like we have a student here. Shout out to Zook. I mean, Zook is up there. I mean, a great guy, but he's like a freaking machine. You know, Zook is on top of you. Like you have a bad day. Like you start thinking about how you're gonna recover next day because he will freaking smash you into the ground. What a phenomenal guy.
And that's why she's like you're saying with Zook, like she's the best thing to happen to the gym because she kind of has that mascot effect where you don't hear those complaints from the people in the gym because, you know, you can't, you know, as long as there's a 65-year-old woman on the mat training just as much as you, just as hard as you, like there's no room to complain. So it does act as like, it does serve as like an inspiration for everyone on the mat. So I think part of the reason why people love training here and training the way they do is because they see her and they're inspired by her. So we're just super, you know, appreciative of her, and we're so happy to have her.
No, good for you. I mean, I bet that's inspiration for you. It gives you hope that you can be in business for more than 10 years.
She's my I call her my nutritionist because she's always talking smack on my dietary choices, and she's always pushing me to eat healthier.
Nice. What's her name? What's her name?
Marilee, but we call her Mama Freestyle.
Nice.
Yeah, she eats super healthy. She's super self-conscious, and then meanwhile, me and Danny are eating like Dairy Queen and donuts. So it's like
spoken like a young guy. That's it right there.
Yeah. She's like, "How are you gonna win worlds eating the way that you guys do?" We're like, "Hey, it's our only vice, you know."
Hey, listen, let's pivot this conversation just a little bit before we wrap this up. You know, let's go back to the beginning of where you came from, where jiu-jitsu started. I know you train with Jason Scully, Grappler's Guide. I mean, arguably, you know, probably one of the oldest online platforms for jiu-jitsu videos, if not the biggest ones. I don't know, there's a lot of them out there these days. But Jason definitely had a fundamental role on development of video jiu-jitsu or component teaching or learning. Let me rephrase this. A learning ability via videos, essentially. Watching videos and really educating yourselves when it comes to jiu-jitsu. I do know that he played a significant role with your development. Talk about that a little bit. You know, at that point, you are white, blue belt when all this is starting?
Yeah, it was like towards the end of white. I got my blue belt from Jason, so it was around that area. And so, yeah, just being exposed to that level of creativity and that level of cutting edge jiu-jitsu, it's such a, you know, so early in my career and so young because I was a juvenile at the time, really set like a precedent for what I would expect later down the road, you know, because for me, like seeing what jiu-jitsu was for the first time, being from Jason, that's what I expected all of jiu-jitsu to be. And that's what I expected all coaches, how passionate they are about jiu-jitsu. That's what I expected that to be like. So, you know, I'm so appreciative and I'm so glad that, you know, to have that exposure, you know, going to the gym and having someone figure out a new technique and being in the corner and seeing Jason record those, you know, 50 moves in a minute videos, you know, like being exposed to jiu-jitsu at that level so earlier on undoubtedly affected the way I look at jiu-jitsu and how jiu-jitsu later down the road became important to me and how I prioritize the cerebral aspects of jiu-jitsu and how I push that in the academy we have now. And, you know, Jason still comes and trains with us, you know, time to time. He pops in and, you know, we've been on the Grappler's Guide. We've taught a couple courses on the Grappler's Guide. So Jason is a very integral part of my jiu-jitsu development to this day. But yeah, it's amazing, man. I'm so happy and so proud of the things he's done. Unfortunately, like he sold his school.
This was
and he
this
decided
was some time ago now, hasn't it?
What was that?
This was some time ago now. This is not a recent news.
Yeah,
right?
this had to been like 10 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
He had the Grapplers Guide Academy, and he sold it so that he could focus primarily on the online stuff. And so at that point, I had branched off and trained at other schools, but the little time that I had with him was huge for my development. And as a 16-year-old kid doing jiu-jitsu, or 15, however old I was, it was like eye-opening. It was like, wow, like this is what jiu-jitsu is. It's so different from wrestling, you know, like you got to learn all these techniques and these chains and these concepts. And so later I would find out not all coaches are like that, unfortunately. But
you got spoiled,
at
didn't
least
you?
that's, you know, I was very lucky to be exposed to that level of jiu-jitsu that early on as my first real exposure. So as
you were exposed to these videos and everything that he's doing and the phenomenal way of teaching, you know, and obviously his brain works slightly different than average person. Do you think that the video component is important? You talked about BJJ Fanatics. You know, you guys shot several of them out there. You know, there's many instructors on BJJ Fanatics these days. Do you think these videos are actually benefiting students, or it's just not a necessary tool that people can essentially learn at the academy?
So for me, like I was going to the guy that people were searching for on YouTube to learn more jiu-jitsu from. So I kind of, it was conflicting, right? Because like I had access to the information, but maybe people in the middle of Kansas didn't. And so I understood the importance of what he was doing and how his content could help people who didn't maybe have access to him directly. So for me, I knew how important that the extra resources were. From the very beginning, I knew how important they were. Maybe I didn't have to use them at the time, but having that exposure opened up my eyes to like the possibilities and where jiu-jitsu would be heading maybe sooner than most people would have thought. Because I remember like Jason getting the YouTube plaque for hitting, I think it's like 1 million subscribers or whatever the case may be. And so seeing that transitionary period where jiu-jitsu went from being a very niche thing, you would have to go to an academy to learn, to seeing it grow into this thing that anyone can access on the internet, was really cool. And knowing that person and having that person be an influential a person in my life was very cool to see. So,
well, good for you. I think there's a lot of people out there who wish they were in your shoes.
Yeah, but I think you're hitting on something that I never even thought of. Like, for sure, that exposure maybe planted a seed in my brain, and that seed later developed into the reasons why I'm so interested in being on all these platforms and teaching, and why I think that content is so important. I think I would be stupid to not make that connection now and realize that for sure there was an influence there.
Yeah, well, I mean, Gary and I, we were talking about this last week. It's when I remember last conversation we had. Like everything happens in the past. It's whether positive or negative.
Influence, right? We were talking about different influences.
Yeah, it's like whether positive or negative. All these experiences shape us who we are today. Right. Mm-hmm. So, like, if you didn't meet Jason, you might have met somebody else who taught you jiu-jitsu, but you definitely would not be in the same spot. You could have been in a better spot or worse spot. We don't know, but it would not be the same spot, right? It's like these little milestones. They lead us as the path is being developed through these experiences, right? Why are you shaking your head?
I'm finally agreeing with you.
I got something to agree what is that? About. That's kind of like the butterfly effect, right? If you can travel back in time and remove that part of your life, you for sure would not be the same person.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me, a while back, somebody asked me this question. I'm going to ask you this question right now. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. If somebody paid you $10 million right now, today, they're going to write you a check, but you do not have exposure to jiu-jitsu, zero, and then you forget everything that came with it, would you take it?
No, never. And we have these conversations all the time. No, it's invalid. Like, how can you put a price on all the sacrifice and all the things through jiu-jitsu that made you the person you are right now? It's really priceless, I don't even, if you deleted jiu-jitsu from my brain, I don't even know how it would function mentally, because a lot of the things I believe in and the person I've become are like integrated into jiu-jitsu, you know? So, and for me, I'm not a materialistic person, so I need a lot less than $100 million to be happy. So jiu-jitsu is my happiness. So I couldn't sell that for the world.
I'm just saying, you could have been a sheik or something. I don't know. But you chose not to. Okay.
Not with 10 billion. You're not going to be a sheik.
It's a very good question, though. It's a very good question. But it's like, you know, when I decided to open up the gym with Danny, it was a moment in my life where I was saying goodbye to any conventional job, and I was closing the door on having a normal life at that point, you know? So I had an opportunity to be an embryologist and maybe make good money or, you know, go the path my dad took and go into construction or whatever. Like, but the moment I said bye to those things, like I accepted that jiu-jitsu would be my life. And so it doesn't matter how much money at this point is being offered. It's just, you know, it is who I am.
Well, good for you. Good for you. Jiu-jitsu, running a jiu-jitsu academy is not an easy task. It is a grind. It takes a lot of sacrifices. You're right about that. And good for you, especially if you're successful with it and it goes according to your plan. Man, my head goes off to you, especially opening academy in the middle of pandemic. Jesus Christ. You guys are out of your minds.
At the very least, right? We got through the hardest part. So I can't imagine that we'll be confronted with a challenge as challenging as like the pandemic. But yeah, you know, who knows? But I think getting through that set us up for success, maybe going down the line, because I imagine it would be hard to confront an obstacle as big as that one.
It definitely was, and I think you guys are doing well, so much ahead. And I think people are frustrated with the situation over the last 2 years, and they are seeking jiu-jitsu. I mean, we're seeing it here at the academy, and people love jiu-jitsu moment they introduce. So I think their opportunities are ahead of you, right? The question is, what are you going to make out of it, and how you gonna make it successful? So that's the big question for you guys as time goes on. Before we wrap up the show, we've been at this for, Gary, how long?
An hour and 10 minutes.
An hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Time flies when you're having fun. Before we wrap this up, end of each episode, we are doing this cool thing where guest who was sitting in your seat on the previous episode asked a question, not knowing that it will be you that we will be asking this question. So Gary will share the name of the guest, and then he will drop the question. This could be interesting. So let's take a look.
This is from Mateus Lutes. Somebody I think you're familiar with. And I kind of want this to be a two-parter. He only gave us one, but I want to add something to it. And his question was, what was your feeling after your first jiu-jitsu class? And then the second part is, what was your feeling after you and Daniel taught your first class at Movement Art?
Those are two really good questions. And Mateus Lutes is a former teammate of mine, a really good friend of mine, who's doing huge things with RŌL Jiu Jitsu.
For sure.
So
his academy is beautiful, isn't it?
Question. Oh, it's amazing, man.
Jeez.
It's like that's the guy that I would love to just sit down with him and pick his brain, because his transition from being an amazing athlete and competitor to being a businessman and really embracing that role and just doing such a phenomenal job with it. It's like, I don't think he gets enough credit, from the community for doing what he's doing. Cause he comes from humble beginnings. He's actually from the same city my parents are from in Brazil, Belo Horizonte. And, he comes from humble beginnings, very much like, my parents, and he didn't have probably, traditional business education like myself, and to see him do the things that he's doing is really impressive and inspiring.
He recently was on this cool podcast you can listen to.
Yeah. I'm going to listen to it for sure.
Yeah, and it was
shameless plug right there. But no, listen, he talks about a lot of it. He talks about a lot of this. But let's not take away from your question, okay? You're not trying to wiggle out of this question, are you? What are you doing here?
First class for you, and then the first class teaching.
Yeah, I remember my first class to this day, like it was yesterday. So we didn't get to touch upon it in this podcast, but I did have experience with other martial arts growing up. My parents put me in Taekwondo at 4. I got my black belt in Taekwondo. I got my black belt in Kyokushin Karate before being put in Jiu-Jitsu. And I remember my first Jiu-Jitsu class. I just turned in the teenage years. So I was like 13, 14, whatever. And the feeling of just being able to control someone on the ground, and I took the kids back and I choked them. I remember I had just learned a rear naked choke, and I was able to implement it in the rounds that same day. And after the class, my dad asked me, he's like, how did it go? And I just remember being so ecstatic and having this experience that I couldn't compare to any martial art I've done before. And I was like, I want to do this. Like, forget everything else. Like, I really want to pursue this. And I would think about this experience more and more later down the road. And I think what it was like, you don't experience that same level of control when you do like a striking martial art, at least not in my experience. Like, I feel like, I did point style and I did full contact, and it's very hard to have this ability to allow someone to yield or not. I feel like in striking, it's like you're going to knock someone out, or, if you're doing point, you're barely tapping them. It's all imaginary. So, jiu-jitsu translates to the art of yielding, because you really do control the person to the point where they cannot inflict any more damage onto you, and you give them a chance to give up. And so as I reflected on this more and more after that experience, I realized that resonates with me a lot. Like, I really like that philosophy, and I don't think I've ever felt that through the other martial arts, even though they're all beautiful in their own way. I just feel like that's something I can get behind and something I can preach and something I would like to eventually show and teach people. So that's why I think I stuck with jiu-jitsu.
Nice. Chris Howder talks about that. It's the act of, I can show you mercy. I've reached a position now where I can show you mercy. And that's something that he's talked about quite often.
Yeah, he also talks about ground hitting people, not hitting people. People hitting
right, and jiu-jitsu or judo. Yes, it's the art of hitting you with the earth.
You'll show you mercy as the ground is hitting you.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. I want this second part too, though. You guys open up during the pandemic. First class you teach. You're turning the lights off that night. What's going through your head?
Oh man. Ooh. We were like kids on Christmas morning, man. We were just, me and Danny had a smile from ear to ear, like for days, like after that first class. And I think it was actually a really good showing. We had a lot of friends from the area come out and support us. We had a lot of new faces as well, and a couple of people signing up on the first day. So I just remember us sitting in the lounge area where we have like these Walmart couches that we had bought probably the week before that, and we were just looking at each other and we were like, man, like we could do this. Like, I could see ourselves doing this for the rest of our lives. And we were just so happy for ourselves, and almost like too like a huge sigh of relief for like everything that led up to that point. We talked about the decision, but there was just so much leading up to that, like that went into like building the place out, so it was just a huge sigh of relief and happiness and just contentness with everything we went through leading up to that moment, being able to finally teach jiu-jitsu to our potential students, and then just boom, starting a new chapter in our lives. So yeah, that was amazing.
Congratulations.
What an amazing story.
Thank you.
I mean, what a great, it's so refreshing, Gary, don't you think? It's so refreshing to hear a story of success in jiu-jitsu, starting in such a tough spot, starting in a spot where most would not even start. Most would say, don't even do this. I still want to know if you're out of your mind, but that's a separate thing. But
sure, I'm out of my mind.
Well, I'm pretty sure that most people would not do what you've done or what you guys have done. And yet there is clear sign of success, and you guys are barely starting. I mean, barely, not even 2 years into it. They often say 3 to 5 years is where you really find out the success of the business. So you guys are not even there. You're barely scratching the surface, and yet there is a clear path of success ahead of you. So I'm excited. I'm excited for you guys. I'm excited to watch from the sidelines and see what you guys can develop and how you guys can shape this whole thing, and help the community that surrounds you. So good for you. Good for you.
Thank you, guys. And whenever you guys are in the area, Philadelphia area, maybe you want to explore the beautiful cuisine of cheesesteaks, or you want to just do some historical sightseeing, you guys are more than welcome to come train with us. We're only like 30 minutes away from the city limits, so you guys are more than welcome to come train, and can't wait to meet you guys in person.
Thank you so much.
It would be phenomenal. It would be phenomenal. All right. Well, why don't we wrap this up for today? What a great conversation. I think a lot of I got pages of notes now. So yeah. Why you?
I just want to know which side of the street am I getting my cheesesteak on, right? Because there's competing one right across the street from the other. Where do your loyalties lie?
What are you guys talking about?
Thomas doesn't know what we're talking about.
No
but
idea.
Go ahead.
Explain.
Yeah,
this.
he's talking about Geno's. Well, so in Philly, there's a street where there's like Geno's and there's Pat King's of Steaks, and but that's only if you really care about those two places. Personally, I think Tony Luke's has the better cheesesteak. So when you
Nick just dropped a third one. Look at that.
Luke's. I love it.
Oh well, there's a lot. There's Jim's. There's John's roast pork. There's a lot of good places. There's a new place we just heard about, Angelo's, that apparently has a really good cheesesteak. So Danny and I have to go over there. But for sure, when you guys come, we'll give you guys the full experience. We'll start with Tony Luke's and make our way around.
I'm curious if all these cheesesteaks are approved by Mama Freestyle. That's what I'm wondering. She's gonna be listening to this episode and rolling her eyes.
She's gonna be like, "Have I taught you nothing?" when we lose like a tournament, we come back. She's just like,
it's all those
"I told you, right?
I told you.
You ate a salad."
What a great conversation. Listen, Nick, let's wrap this up for today. Best of luck to you with your academy. We'll be watching you from sidelines and so much ahead of you. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being with us for the last hour or so and sharing all the wisdom, because there's plenty of it.
Yeah, beautiful stuff. Congratulations on everything, and best of luck.
Thank you, guys. And thank you so much again for having me on and allowing me to share my story. The goal is always, hopefully someone hears this and they get inspired by it. If I can help at least one person, maybe chase their dreams or make a decision that'll change their lives, that means the world to me, and that's all I could hope for, right? But thank you, guys.
Beautiful. All right.
Peace.
Later.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to RŌL Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.